Hey, this is Mad Movie Mark for the Mad Movie Mark Movie Review. Thank you for joining me as I review the 1968 drama, The Swimmer.
God, what energy!
He keeps himself in shape.
Oh, come on. He always ate like a horse, never put on an ounce.
Well, I wish I could say that that's true. It's very flattering, but it's not true at all. I'm reviewing every movie that has 100% fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes. I'm giving them all a score of 1 to 10. After I watch them and score them all, I will rank them from worst to best. I started in the 1920 silent movie era, and now I'm at 1968 with The Swimmer. This movie predominantly starred Burt Lancaster as Ned, and it also there's a character named Julie played by Janet Landgard as well. It has 100% fresh rating from the critics and an 83% fresh rating from the audience. Burt Lancaster said that he felt that this was his greatest acting performance of all time. I will admit this was a movie that I kind of steered away from. I didn't actively try to watch this movie until it showed up on the 100% fresh rating list, and a lot of that was because of the IMDb description of what this movie is about. It says that a man spends a summer day swimming as many pools as he can over a quiet suburban town. Doesn't sound like a very good movie to me at all, but I will say that that description is a very poor description of what this movie is, because this movie is absolutely spectacular. It is fantastic. It is Burt Lancaster's greatest acting performance of all time. I will give him that. It's also probably the greatest movie he ever made, which means I'm going to have to go update my short of the greatest Burt Lancaster movies of all time that I did. But essentially what this movie is about is Ned. Now he just shows up one day. He kind of stumbles out of the woods. Doesn't stumble, he walks out of the woods. Burt Lancaster was in his early 50s when he did this movie, and he looks fantastic for someone in his early 50s. But he walks out of the woods and he walks up to his friend's house. His friends are rich. They own a pool. His friends are like, "Hey, where have you been?" He's like, "Oh, I've been around." So basically, he's been away, and no one knows where he's been for years. But he just plays it off like he's just been around, and he just hasn't told anyone of his whereabouts.
Where have you been keeping yourself?
Oh, here and there, here and there.
And he's kind of just, swimming in their pool, having fun with them, talking with them. And then he stares off into the distance and he says, "You know what? There's a lot of pools from here to my house. And if I do it right, I can kind of swim all the way back to my house from pool to pool to pool." There's like 8 or 9 pools that he has to swim to kind of make a line to his house.
Well, don't you see? I just figured it out. If I take a sort of a dog leg to the southwest, I can swim home.
Now he decides he's going to do this without first asking any of the people who own the pools. So there's a bit of narcissism here. He's a very narcissistic person. He really only thinks about himself and what is best for him. And we will see this throughout the entire movie. But there's also a really weird glimpse of something here in the beginning of the movie, and I'm still not sure that I'm correct about this. So there's going to be spoilers here, but when he's looking out into the distance and he's thinking about these pools that he wants to swim in, he has a lapse where he forgets some of the people's names of his neighbors.
Then down Alewives Lane to the Biswangers, and then... Wait a minute, who's next? I can't think. I had it just a minute ago. Who is it? Well, who is it? Who's next to the Biswangers?
Shirley Abbott.
Shirley Abbott.
You could tell he knew them at one point. It's not that he just doesn't know these people. It's that he just can't remember who these people are. So he has to ask for help. And this kind of works its way into the movie as we go along. Now, throughout the movie, we get little glimpses from the neighbors and from the people he visits who you can kind of tell that they know that the life he's portraying isn't the life that's actually real. They know that his family isn't there. They know that he doesn't have a home. They know that he's maybe having some sort of crisis, like dementia or something. You can read it in their faces. You can read it in the actions that they take. A lot of them are taken aback by his responses to things when he tries to portray his family as being fine, when he tries to say that his family is at home. You can tell that his neighbors know that something is up, and he's just either not able to express it, he doesn't want to admit it because of his narcissism, or he actually can't remember that these things happen, that these things are going on. But if you watch carefully, or if you watch it a second time through, you can definitely see that his neighbors understand that he is not fully forthcoming, or that he just doesn't understand what's going on in his life. So he starts swimming from pool to pool. The first people he meets, they're really happy to see him. They're friends. Sure, you can swim in our pool, no problem. But as he's going from pool to pool, we start to learn more about his life. So he believes that his family's at home and that everything's fine, and that he's just out for a nice morning, a nice swim throughout the day. But as time goes on, and as he's going from friend to friend, we learn that that's not actually the case, that he's actually lost his job.
Well, now, I don't care. I don't care how big a firecracker this new guy was. Well, brother, that story really jolted me. I kept thinking, what if some young smartass comes to our shop and does that to me?
He's lost his family. He's cheated on his wife. His kids have left him, and there are people whose pools he swims in who are upset at him because he owes them money, or because he hasn't seen them in a long time, and he's just kind of imposing himself on these people as he's trying to swim in their pools. The second pool he goes to, he meets a woman who is very upset at him because he didn't go to his friend's. His friend was sick in the hospital, and he never went to visit him. And he says, like, "Oh, well, I'm sorry about that. I always meant to go. I just couldn't get around to it. How is my friend?" And of course, his friend passed away, and he doesn't know this because I don't know if it's because of the narcissism, or because he does actually have dementia and he just can't remember things like this, or if he just never bothered to find out because it didn't deal with him in any way. It didn't benefit him in any way to know how his friend was doing.
You're not welcome here, Mr. Merrill.
Well, you know me, don't you? I'm a friend of your son.
A friend? How dare you use that word? You never came to see him. You never even called him at the hospital.
Well, how is he? Is he better?
But this kind of sets up the rest of the movie to where not everyone's going to be happy to see him. He has skeletons in his closet from the past that we're going to find out about, and it's just a very impactful scene. One of the best scenes in the entire movie. So as he's meeting these people, they slowly become more and more upset with him, and he slowly starts crumbling, and his memory of things starts getting worse. He can't remember why he hasn't seen these people in years. Like I said, he thinks that his wife is at home. He thinks his kids are at home. Now, I don't know if this is just something that he's told himself to kind of feel better about himself, because he ruined his life. He was a bit of an alcoholic. Like I said, he cheated on his wife left him. So he's either building this story, he's building this world around him that he believes is true and is actually not, or it's just that he actually has a problem like dementia and he can't remember what's going on. But either way, he's completely narcissistic, and he's kind of a terrible person, and he's led this really terrible life of things that he's done, and people are just kind of reminding him about this as he's going from pool to pool. And at the end of the movie, he meets the woman who he had an affair with, and they start talking, and it becomes really a deep conversation about who he was to her and who they were as people. And he kind of breaks down at the end of the movie that he once had this really great life and that he doesn't have it anymore, and he starts crying.
What happened?
What happened to what?
Nothing's turned out. Nothing's turned out the way I thought it would.
And the last pool he has to swim is like a pool that's open to the public, and he doesn't have any money, so he has to bum some money off of a friend, and he ends up swimming in the pool, and then he ends up trying to cut across a freeway, but he looks extremely distorted and he doesn't know what he's doing and completely out of place and completely confused. And he finally gets up to his house, and his house, you can tell, has been kind of gated off for years. Like no one's lived there. It's like completely like a ghost town. There's no one at this house. It's been vacated for a long time. And he gets up to the door and he starts crying. And I don't know if he like passes out at the door or if he like actually dies at the door. But you can see like this man who started off like in the very beginning of this as this virile, strong person who seemed like he had everything. And at the end of the movie, he ends up actually having nothing, and his life is completely in shambles. And it's really weird because in the movie he says he's going to do this through like one day, like he's just going to swim throughout the day to pool to get to his house. But it seems like there's like a passage of time, like there's a passage of seasons. So I think it's supposed to be like showing that his life is passing him by as the seasons are passing by and as he's swimming through these pools. It's really interesting how they did this. And at the end of the movie, I finally realized that the reason why he came out of the woods in the beginning of the movie is because he's homeless. He has no place to live. And in fact, throughout the entire movie, the only clothes he wears are like a pair of swim shorts. He doesn't have a towel, he doesn't have anything. He just has a pair of swim shorts. And I'm thinking like what we're not seeing on camera is the fact that he says he's going to travel through these pools in one day, but he's actually like kind of meandering and wandering through life homeless. And you see that he's just this lost person at the end of the movie, and it's because of I don't know, alcoholism. Maybe alcoholism caused dementia, excess, infidelity. You can really see his world kind of how it's crumbling as he's swimming from pool to pool, and it's a very interesting. I've never seen this type of movie before in my life. It almost reminds me a little bit of Ordinary People, the way it's shot, the way it looks. Ordinary People came out like 20 years later, though. But the cinematography reminds me a lot of Ordinary People, and kind of what they're trying to do as far as like a mental illness perspective also reminds me of that movie. And that movie is in my top 10 movies of all time. So this movie is incredibly beautifully acted. There is a point in the movie where Ned meets up with this girl named Julie. Now, Julie is someone who used to babysit for Ned and his family. And Ned says, hey, you know, I haven't seen you in forever. Why don't you come over and why don't you babysit for my kids?
Well, I guess you don't need me anymore.
Well, of course we need you, Julie. We're always looking for a babysitter.
Oh, Mr. Merrill.
How about Sunday night? You busy?
No.
Okay, you're hired. You still live in the same place?
Yes.
I'll pick you up at 7.
You're putting me on.
And she's like, babysit, I'm 20 years old. Like, I just got out of college. Like, I don't do that anymore. And he ends up inviting her to go on this journey with him. Now, she goes, I think, to one or two of the pools, and then she admits that she had a crush on him, and he ends up hitting on her, which, like, drives her away, which kind of shows, like, the kind of person he is as well, the narcissism that he has, and the fact that he thinks that his wife is at home, and he thinks that his marriage is fine, or at least that's what he is telling everyone. That's kind of what he's portraying, is that everything in his life is fine, but yet he's still hitting on this girl who used to be his babysitter, who's 20 years old. There's just so much like to dig into with this movie. There's so many layers, and I'm sure I'm missing a lot of things. But once in the beginning, once I started thinking that maybe he has dementia, maybe he has some sort of mental problem, the rest of the movie, it just like kind of opened up, and it was incredible. The journey of his life and the journey of him slowly going from this alpha male to this person who's just completely beaten down and destroyed, and realized that he's destroyed his life. It's just incredible. It's like an hour and a half movie, and the way that they're able to tell this story and to tell it in such a fast way is amazing. So the writing in this movie is absolutely stellar. It's probably one of the best written movies I've ever seen in my life. If I'm comparing this to Ordinary People, this is high praise for me because Ordinary People was such an emotionally impactful movie for me because I had personal things in my life that I actually was able to identify with in Ordinary People, and this movie kind of gave me that same kind of feeling, that same kind of how dreadful this movie is at the end, but you don't really feel that badly for him because of like the type of person that he was when he was younger, but the writing is spectacular. Burt Lancaster is absolutely amazing. This might be one of my favorite acting performances of an actor in any movie ever. He's just so good in this movie. The cinematography is spectacular. Everything is just fantastic. In the background, the changing of the seasons, and you having to kind of dig under the surface as to what's going on. Just amazing. I'm really sad that I didn't get this movie a chance before, and that IMDb led me astray with its tagline, because it makes it seem like it's such a boring, like, nothing movie, which isn't the case at all. I would recommend seeing this movie, even though I kind of like ruined the ending if you haven't seen it yet. I would recommend seeing this movie because this movie is almost like a kind of movie that like changes your life entirely. It's like when I see Almost Famous. Every time I see Almost Famous, I want to go out and make something of myself. This kind of movie is like the kind of movie that like is almost like a life-changing movie. I'm obviously going to give it a 10 out of 10. It might actually be in my top 10 favorite movies of all time now. I'm not even halfway through the 100% fresh list, and I feel like I've watched 5 or 6 movies that might be in my top 10 of all time. But incredibly spectacular. I can't say enough about this movie. It's just a movie that deserves to be watched. Thank you. I hope you have a great day. My next movie will be the movie Kes, that's Kes, and it will be the last movie from the 1960s. Thank you. I hope you have a great day.